with regards to Raider and my memory of him, there's so many things that I can say. I think what's at the forefront of my mind is the brotherhood that I had with Raider. You know, I met Raider through my relationship with Dr. Butcher, because Butcher and Steve D had practiced together before I ever met Steve D. And when I entered the 1991 East Coast DMC and walked into Club Pyramid with you, Drew,
Yep.
and I remember seeing all of the X-Men. All the X-Men entered that battle, but only Steve D advanced. And so I remember at Club Pyramid, these are the preliminaries of the competition, feeling a little intimidated, to be honest with you, because the X-Men were there, but it felt like you were in this lunchroom and you were the new kid in junior high school that didn't know anybody. Whereas Steve D had relationships with Clark Kent and the other DJs that were there. He had his crew, the X-Men, and they were all competing together. I was there with Dr. Butcher, and obviously I felt good about that, but it was just me competing. So I felt like this young kid in a lunchroom that didn't know anyone, and then there's the X-Men all loud and laughing at the DJs that were competing. So there was like this element of intimidation that I honestly felt. And I remember asking Dr. Butcher to introduce me to Steve, and he did. And Raider happened to be right next to Steve when I met him. Wow. And so Steve introduced me to Raider. And I remember shaking Raider's hand, and Raider didn't say anything. He just nodded at me and shook my hand. And I started to train with him because Steve D, after witnessing what I was capable of, again, thanks to Dr. Butcher's training, he asked us to be down with the X-Men. So a week after competing, we're at Steve D's house training with the entire crew, and we got asked to be down with the group, and I started to form this really strong bond with Raider specifically. And there were moments, or days I should say, when I would go up to Harlem, New York, where they were living at the time, and not even see Steve D or any of the other members, Sean C, Johnny Cash. I would just go to Raider's house and train with him. So my point is, there was this brotherhood that I had with him that was special. I remember we went to the movies together, you know, whereas like Dr. Butcher and I would train and then go eat. And Mrs. Sinister and I would train and maybe go to a club and like hang out or whatever. Raider and I would do random shit like go to the movies together, you know? So there was just a brotherhood that I developed with Raider that was unique, you know? And I miss that about my connection with him. But, you know, as we all say, the cliche thing to say, you know, his spirit is still here. Obviously, we're still talking about him. And, whenever I touch the turntables, there's a moment that I think about him, especially when it's a weekend, when it's like a Saturday or Sunday, because that's when I would train with him the most, like on a weekend.